Pokemon's official competitive format, known as VGC, has seen a massive explosion of popularity during the Nintendo Switch era. Official live streams for these events are seeing significantly higher viewer numbers than ever. Regionals and internationals are regularly breaking the record for the highest number of players competing in a major tournament, and several VGC content creators have grown especially popular online. However, something that I've noticed despite all this is that there are a lot more casual Pokemon fans out there that are still pretty unfamiliar with the competitive scene in general. Not that I blame them, this is a very complicated game. And they either have a lot of misconceptions of it, thanks Pachirisu, or they're unfamiliar with why some of the most commonly used Pokemon are so strong. Today, I wanted to try to bridge that gap between the competitive and casual crowds by explaining what exactly is it about some of these metagame staples that makes them so strong to begin with. I'll mostly be focusing on competitive play during the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, as that is the era that we are currently in as of the creation of this video, although I will be touching on some metagames from before then as well. Alright, you know what? Enough preamble, let's just get this first one over with quickly. If you've paid any sort of attention to competitive Pokemon content online at all recently, then you've probably heard a million times already why Incineroar is so strong, but I still wanted to talk about him, so I'm going to try to keep this brief. In short, Incineroar is an absolutely monstrous Swiss Army knife of a Pokemon. It has an absolutely ridiculous amount of support tools to help its team, although the main draw of it is its hidden ability Intimidate, which lowers the attack stat of both the opponent's Pokemon by one stage each time Incineroar switches in, which can help the rest of its team sponge hits from physical attackers. It also famously pairs this with a move Parting Shot, which lowers both the attack and special attack stats of the targeted Pokemon by one stage each, before letting Incineroar then switch back out. This allows it to weaken its opponents even further and then safely switch to a teammate with little risk. Actually, because of Incineroar's low speed and amazing bulk, it can eat a strong hit for a teammate, Parting Shot out after its opponent moves, and then safely bring in another Pokemon that will now take significantly less damage because of the attack drops. You can even switch Incineroar in and out over and over again to constantly activate Intimidate to greatly hinder your opponent's physical attackers. And this isn't even all that Incineroar can do. It also has moves like Fake Out for flinching opponents, Knock Off for removing opponents' items, Will-O-Wisp when spreading burns and weakening physical attackers even further, Taunt for shutting down the opposing support Pokemon who like to use status moves, Throat Chop for denying the opponent from using sound moves such as Parting Shot or Hyper Voice, Sunny Day if you're weird, and several other examples that would make up 90% of this video. But let's be real here, there's a good chance you already knew all that. And this thing is the eternal snail of VGC. No matter how far away you try to get from it, it always somehow comes back to ruin your day. This thing is the king of VGC for good reason, and I doubt anything is taking its crown anytime soon. So let's talk about some other metagame staples that, mostly, aren't quite as infamous as Incineroar, shall we? Rillaboom is another popular support Pokemon in VGC that plays a fairly similar role to Incineroar, believe it or not. The two are actually very commonly paired together in teams to form part of a Fire-Water Grass trio, with the water type usually being Urshifu Rapid Strike, although we can talk about them another time. The primary thing that Rillaboom has going for it is, like Incineroar, its hidden ability. Grassy Surge is an ability that activates grassy terrain when the user switches in, and usually lasts for 5 turns. As of Generation 8, Grassy Terrain not only increases the power of Grass-type moves by 30%, but then it also heals every single Pokemon on the field affected by the terrain for a 16th of their maximum HP, effectively giving them a free leftovers. This can effectively give your team a lot of extra bulk, allowing them to survive longer by healing off a bit of damage they had previously taken each turn. It's extra nasty if they also have the leftovers themselves, so that way they effectively heal an eighth of their health per turn instead. Rillaboom's main claim to fame isn't just its hidden ability. The main reason it was so good, especially in Generation 8, was because on top of its hidden ability, it also got access to the move Grassy Glide. In Sword and Shield, Grassy Glide was a 70 base power move that got +1 priority in grassy terrain. Because of the added damage boost from the terrain, this meant that Rillaboom could hit you with a 91 base power stab move that could move before you can, regardless of speed. For context, one of the strongest priority moves in the game is Extreme Speed, an 80 base power normal type move with +2 priority rather than just +1. Gen 8 Grassy Glide, under grassy terrain, is 11 points higher than that. It's not as high priority, but that's not that big of a deal. Whereas Incineroar can output damage but is mainly used for support, Rillaboom is still a very supportive mon, but it can also hit like an absolute thermonuclear bomb. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Grassy Glide was nerfed to only be 55 base power instead, making it effectively 71 base power when grassy terrain is up. While it doesn't hit nearly as hard with Grassy Glide nowadays, it's still a really nice tool in Rillaboom's kit, being much stronger than most other priority moves, which usually range around the 40 base power range with a few outliers. In Generation 9, Rillaboom now often runs Wood Hammer instead of a coverage move like it did in Gen 8, allowing it to still delete things with grassy terrain up even without priority. In addition to all this, Rillaboom still gets Fake Out and U-Turn to help with positioning in a very similar way that Incineroar can. It can even technically run Knock Off if it wanted to, but nobody does that. Rillaboom is an overall fantastic support Pokemon that can still output crazy amounts of damage on its own, and it is easily one of the best Pokemon to come out of Generation 8. On an unrelated note, this just in, Tabu Bulu was found dead yesterday after being shot in a Chicago alleyway with the perpetrator still at large. Who could have possibly committed such an absolutely heinous crime against humanity? Probably not worth looking too deep into that. Remember when I said that we'd be looking at Pokemon that are not quite as infamous as Incineroar? Yeah, this guy's the exception to that. Landorus is perhaps the second most infamous Pokemon in VGC history behind everyone's favorite furry heel wrestler, and even in the competitive single battle scene, it may just be straight up the most infamous competitive Pokemon of all time. This video is centered around VGC, however, so I won't be talking about OU here. Shout out to all the OU players though. Regardless, for most of its career, Landorus has been dominant primarily in its Therian form, where this thing is a damage-dealing machine. It has a whopping 145 base physical attack, which, especially back when it first released, was completely ridiculous. For comparison's sake, Garchomp's base attack stat is 130, Dragonite's is 134, and Koraidon's is 135, albeit Koraidon probably still hits harder thanks to its ability, but still. Although Landorus' base speed isn't incredible, it can be patched up pretty easily with just a simple Choice Scarf. This thing could just switch in, click one of either Rock Slide, Stone Edge, or Earthquake, and it just end up dominating entire tournaments. And I haven't even yet mentioned the main thing that it can do that Garchomp can't. Because yes, even before the reign of Incineroar, there was yet another Intimidate wielding cat that ruled the metagame. On top of also being an incredible offensive Pokemon, Landorus could also be used to weaken its opponent's damage output as well, not only to support its own team, but to help itself switch in safer as well. Landorus even gets access to U-turns so it can constantly switch itself back in and out and to keep intimidating the opponent over and over again. Sound familiar at all? This thing defined entire metagames back at its prime, which makes the fall off all that more sad to see. Landorus Therian's usage has begun to decline in recent generations, since its role as an Intimidator has mostly been taken up by Incineroar. While Incineroar certainly doesn't have the same damage output that Landorus does, it fits on way more teams just because of its supportive capabilities. And with Incineroar being quite literally everywhere, Landorus T just isn't as appealing if you want a Pokemon with Intimidate, which sucks for Lando since Intimidate is half its personality. This is partially why in Generation 9, Landorus finally decided to give himself a nice good look in the mirror, reflect on himself a little bit, and oh hey, look at that, he has another form, who knew? Landorus Incarnate has recently picked up a lot more usage as a primarily offensive mod, entirely thanks to it finally gaining access to its hidden ability, Sheer Force. Sheer Force gives its user a 30% increase in damage on certain moves with secondary effects, in exchange for those moves losing access to the secondary effects entirely. This creates an absolutely bizarre effect where several Pokemon with Sheer Force that would normally be physical attackers end up hitting even harder with their special moves instead. And Landorus Incarnate is not exempt from this. A Sheer Force Landorus somehow manages to hit even harder with Earth Power than it can with Earthquake. And it gets even crazier than that, because for some unknown reason, not even explainable to the mighty Arcboost up above, Sheer Force disables the recoil damage given to the user from the Life Orb. No other recoil move, just the damage from Life Orb. So what you can do is you can stack Sheer Force and Life Orb on one Pokemon and hit harder than you would if you were holding a Choice Specs without any of the drawbacks. This thing actually makes for a really nice answer into Pokemon such as Miraidon, for example, since you can still reliably one-shot it with Earth Power even without a Life Orb. So what then Landorus can do is run a Choice Scarf instead of a Life Orb to more comfortably outspeed the Lizard and just take it out before it even has a chance to move. On top of that, Landorus Incarnate also has access to other moves it'll sometimes use, like Sludge Bomb for the sake of coverage, or Sainseer Storm for powerful damage that hits both opponents that also cannot miss in Rain for some reason. There's an entire tangent that I could go off on how I actually think that this is a glitch that just never got patched out, but I can save that for a future video that I have in mind. Landorus Incarnate, while not quite as popular as the other Pokemon that are on this list, has still made quite a name for itself recently due to all of this, and alongside its other forms, Landorus comes out as one of the most famously strong competitive Pokemon to have ever been created. And yet somehow it was still power crept by Incineroar. Yikes. Okay, so the script is getting a lot longer than I thought it would, so this is going to be the last Pokemon that I talk about for today. Goldengo is a Ghost and Steel type Pokemon introduced in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and it has consistently been one of the best offensive Pokemon in the entire game. While its speed isn't amazing, its bulk is still pretty decent all around, and it has an absolutely phenomenal base 133 special attack stat. Its speed can be patched up with just Tailwind or Choice Scarf anyways, like with Landorus, so it's not an enormous problem to begin with. Goldengo hits incredibly hard with its signature move Make It Rain, a base 120 power Steel type move that hits both targets, but then drops the user's special attack by one stage with each use. Outside of just Make It Rain, it also has access to a lot of other really strong moves in its kit, such as Shadow Ball for stab ghost type damage, some coverage moves like Thunderbolt and Power Gem if its team needs them, and Nasty Claw just to straight up double its special attack. It'll often run items like the Choice Specs or Life Orb to boost its already insanely strong damage even further, or sometimes it'll just run a bulkier set with leftovers if you just don't want to run in guns blazing. It's a pretty versatile attacker that can be run in numerous different ways, but the big thing that Goldengo is going for outside of its offense once again involves its ability. Man, this really is just ability good the video, isn't it? Good as Gold is Goldengo's signature ability that gives a complete immunity to all status moves, which makes it way harder to shut down than it otherwise would be. This ability is actually just insane. You can Spore to put it to sleep, Taunted to prevent it from using Nasty Plot, Thunderwave to slow it down, nothing at all. I'm not even helping him working Goldengo, which I think is actually really funny. Like, damn, okay, tough guy, you don't even want my help? Alright then, good luck against that Miraidon Calyrex Ice team on the other side of the field, and he's already been one-shot by high horsepower. Cool. As if Goldengo already wasn't difficult enough to shut down, outside of that one unfortunate example, its Ghost typing also makes it completely immune to Fake Out, so you aren't even guaranteed to be able to lock it down for a turn unless it's already terrestrialized out of its Ghost typing, making it even more dangerous if it's left unchecked. Goldengo is actually paired pretty well with Pokemon such as, believe it or not, Murkrow and some of the lower power formats of Generation 9. Not Honchkrow, Murkrow, the small bird. Yes, I'm completely serious. Murkrow has access to the ability Prankster, which is an incredibly powerful ability that gives all of its status moves +1 priority. Murkrow can then set up Tailwind for Goldengo to fix its speed, or use Haze, one of the very few moves that is not blocked by Good as Gold, to then reset Goldengo's stat drops that it gets from Make It Rain. Very few Pokemon in the game get both of these moves together along with Prankster, and when the game first came out, Murkrow was actually the only one that got all three, which is why Murkrow Goldengo picked up so much in usage. These two have gone on to see quite a bit of success together even after more priority Tailwind users were added to the game, and the duo even actually won the first ever Limitless Tour from Generation 9. Even without his buddy Murkrow, Goldengo was still proven its strength in spades throughout the entire generation, and only time will tell if it will continue to see the success in future games, which, let's be real, unless it gets seriously nerfed, it probably will. All these Pokemon that I've talked about today are far from the only popular VGC Pokemon, so if there are any more that you want me to talk about next, leave them in the comments and maybe I'll make a follow-up to this video. If you could leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel, it would really mean a lot to me since I'm currently a very small channel trying to grow. I know this video is really scuffed, but this is also the first YouTube video that I've ever made. It is also the first time that I've ever edited a YouTube video as well, so hopefully future videos will be higher quality than this. I would appreciate any constructive criticism and other video ideas in the comment sections to help me make better videos in the future. Also, huge shoutouts to Moxie Boosted for inspiring this video. He's another large VGC content creator on the off chance you haven't heard of him. That's all I got for today, so I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye!